Before we begin, if you're listening to this alone at night, you're exactly where you should be. Subscribe and turn on notifications for more true horror stories, disturbing encounters, and unexplained events uploaded every day. Now lock your doors, turn off the lights, and let's get into tonight's stories. I knew every one of them. I had to. Every hour, I logged each feed. Parking lot, loading dock, lobby, elevators, stairwells, 32 cameras. So when a 33rd feed appeared on my monitor at 2:46 in the morning, I noticed immediately. It was labeled, Camera 33, Basement Hallway. There was one problem. The building didn't have a basement. I called my supervisor. He told me to reboot the system. Before I could, Camera 33 showed a security guard walking down a concrete hallway. Same uniform as mine. Same flashlight. Same jacket. Then the guard stopped beneath the camera and looked directly into it. It was me. A few seconds later, my radio said, "Basement check overdue. My name is Brian." At the time, I worked overnight security at a corporate office complex outside Dallas, Texas. The property had 3 connected buildings, each 4 stories tall. During the day, more than 1,000 people worked there. At night, maybe 6. 2 janitors, occasionally an IT employee, and me. My shift ran from 10 p.m. until 6 a.m. The job was mostly boring, which, in security, is exactly what you want. Every hour, I performed a patrol. Building A, Building B, Building C, parking lot, loading area, then back to the security office. The rest of the time, I watched cameras. The security office was located behind the main lobby. No windows, 2 desks, a wall of monitors, radio charger, key cabinet, coffee maker, nothing glamorous. When I started, the daytime supervisor, Mike, trained me. He'd worked the property almost 12 years. On my first night, he showed me every camera, 32 total. Any blind spots? Plenty. He pointed at the monitors. Never trust cameras more than your own eyes. At the time, I thought it was standard security advice. Later, I realized he meant something specific. The first 2 months were completely normal. Occasional door alarms, employees forgetting badges, a raccoon triggering the loading dock motion detector. Nothing interesting. Then, I started getting motion alerts from Stairwell C, always between 2 and 3 in the morning. The camera showed nothing. I'd walk over, check every floor. Empty. The motion alarm continued. Maintenance inspected the sensor. No problem. Then one night, I saw someone. 2:21 a.m. Camera 17. 3rd floor hallway. A man walked past the far end of the corridor. Dark pants. Light shirt. No badge visible. I grabbed my radio. Security to 3rd floor. No response. I checked the access system. Nobody had badged into Building C for almost 4 hours. I went upstairs. Empty. I checked offices, conference rooms, restrooms. Nothing. When I returned to security, I rewound camera 17. The hallway was empty. No man. I checked the timestamp. 2:21. Nothing. I assumed I'd looked at the wrong camera. A week later, it happened again. Different camera. Parking garage. A person stood beside a concrete pillar, not moving. I watched for nearly 30 seconds, then reached for the radio. The person stepped behind the pillar, never came out. I went to the garage. Nobody. This time, the footage remained. I showed Mike the following morning. He watched it twice, then asked, "What camera?" 28. He frowned. 28 doesn't cover that pillar. He pulled up the camera map. He was right. Camera 28 faced the opposite direction. We opened the live feed. Normal angle. Yet the recorded footage clearly showed an area the camera physically couldn't see. Mike blamed a software issue. IT replaced the recorder. For several weeks, nothing happened. Then camera 33 appeared. It was a Tuesday night, 2:46 a.m. I was drinking coffee, half watching the monitors, when the layout changed. Normally the system displayed 8 feeds per screen. One screen suddenly divided into 9. A new feed appeared in the bottom corner. Camera 33, basement hallway. The image showed a narrow concrete corridor, gray walls, exposed pipes, fluorescent lights. several metal doors. I stared at it. I'd worked there months. There was no basement. At least, none shown on patrol maps. I called Mike. He answered after several rings. Sorry. Quick question. What? Do we have a basement? Long pause. No. I'm looking at one. Another pause. What camera? 33. Mike's voice changed. Restart the recorder. Should I check it first? No. The speed of his answer bothered me. Why? Brian, reboot the system. I turned toward the monitor. Someone had entered camera 33's frame. Security uniform. Back toward the camera. Flashlight in right hand. Radio on left shoulder. My uniform. The guard walked slowly down the hallway. I stopped listening to Mike. The person reached a metal door. Paused. Then turned around. I saw his face. Mine. Not similar. Not another guard. Me. Same beard. Same haircut. Same small scar beside my eyebrow. The person looked directly into the camera, then raised one finger to his lips. My radio crackled. Basement check overdue. I nearly dropped it. Mike heard the transmission through the phone. Who was that? I don't know. Leave the office. What? Go outside. I grabbed my keys. Before leaving, I looked at camera 33 again. The hallway was empty. The metal door at the far end stood open. Beyond it, complete darkness. I went outside and waited in my car until Mike arrived. He got there around 20 minutes later. We entered together. Camera 33 was gone. 32 feeds. Normal. We checked the recording archive. Nothing. No basement feed. No duplicate security guard. No radio transmission recorded. Mike looked more disturbed than confused. I asked him directly. You've seen it before. He denied it. I kept pushing. Finally, he sat down. There used to be another section. What section? Utility level. So there is a basement. Not anymore. The original property had been built around an older industrial building. During redevelopment, parts of the old structure were incorporated into the new complex. Most underground utility spaces were filled or sealed. One corridor remained accessible for several years. Security used to patrol it. What happened? Mike looked at the monitors. A guard got hurt. How? He disappeared. That wasn't what I'd asked. His name was Stephen Cole. Overnight security. One night, Stephen radioed dispatch saying he'd found an unlocked utility door underground. He went to investigate. His final radio transmission was, "There's another guard down here." There wasn't. Stephen was working alone. His radio was recovered near the utility entrance. Stephen wasn't. Police searched the accessible tunnels. Nothing. Eventually, the underground corridor was permanently sealed. The camera system was replaced. Basement patrol removed from procedure. Camera 33 had been Stephen's basement camera. Why didn't you tell me? Because it doesn't exist anymore. I stared at him. I just watched it. Mike didn't answer. The company reviewed the system. IT found no camera 33 configuration. No archived device. Nothing. I requested another assignment. The security company refused. They said there was no legitimate safety issue. I needed the job, so I stayed. For the next few nights, everything was normal. Then my patrol logs started changing. We used an electronic checkpoint system. At various locations, I'd tap a handheld reader against small tags. The system recorded time and location. One morning, Mike reviewed my report. You missed 3rd floor east. No, I didn't. It's not here. I checked. He was right. But there was another entry. 248, basement hallway. My name attached. I hadn't scanned anything underground. The following night, another. 251, basement utility. Then, 253, basement door 3. Each scan appeared while I was physically somewhere else. Mike checked cameras. At 253, I was clearly sitting in the security office. Someone, or something using my credentials, was completing a patrol beneath the building. The company replaced my checkpoint reader. New device. New login. The basement scans continued. Then one night, I heard footsteps behind the security office wall. Not outside. Inside the wall. Slow. Heavy. They moved from left to right. Stopped behind the key cabinet. 3 knocks. Knock. 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 I stood perfectly still. Another 3. I radioed the janitor. Where are you? Building A. Nobody near me. The knocking continued. Then, my radio crackled. "Brian." My own voice. I didn't answer. "Brian." I found the door. I turned the radio off. The security phone rang. Internal extension 033. I didn't answer. It rang for almost 2 minutes. Then stopped. The monitor changed. Camera 33. The hallway. This time, no duplicate version of me. A security guard stood at the far end. Back toward the camera. Older uniform. Different shoulder patches. I knew immediately who I was looking at. Steven. I'd seen his employee photograph. He slowly turned. His face was difficult to see because of video distortion. He raised his radio. My radio, which I'd switched off, came alive. "Don't open it." Then the feed disappeared. Immediately, the key cabinet behind me clicked. One key dropped onto the floor. I picked it up. Metal tag. Stamped. B3. Basement door 3. I'd never seen that key before. I left the building. Called Mike. Refused to return until daylight. The next morning, maintenance searched the security office. The key was real. Old. They compared it with archived building records. It belonged to a utility door in the sealed underground level. Management wanted it destroyed. Mike didn't. He wanted to know what it opened. Against my better judgment, I went with him. A facilities manager found the old basement entrance behind a locked mechanical room. The doorway had been covered by drywall. They cut through it. Behind the wall, concrete stairs descended underground. The air smelled damp, stale. At the bottom, a corridor, exactly like camera 33. Gray walls, exposed pipes, fluorescent fixtures, metal doors. None of the lights should have worked. Power had supposedly been disconnected years earlier. Yet one fluorescent tube flickered at the far end. We reached door 3. B3. Mike inserted the key. It fit. Before he turned it, I remembered the radio. "Don't open it." "Wait." Mike looked at me. Something moved behind the door. A slow scrape. Then, 3 knocks. Knock. 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 Mike removed the key. We left. Facilities sealed the entrance again that afternoon. Nobody opened door 3. At least, not while I worked there. I quit 2 weeks later. Months passed. I found another security job. Day shift. Retail property. Much easier. Then Mike called. The corporate complex had been sold. New owners planned major renovations. Construction crews reopened the underground level. Door 3 was still locked. Police were present when they opened it. Inside, they found an old security station. Desk. Chair. Dead monitors. Radio charger. Patrol sheets. And Stephen Cole's security jacket. Folded neatly across the chair. No remains. No explanation for where he'd gone. But on the desk, construction workers found a patrol log. Most entries were decades old. The final page wasn't. It contained recent dates, recent patrol times, and my name. Brian, 248. Brian, 251. Brian, 253. Every unexplained basement scan from my electronic patrol history had been handwritten into that old logbook. The final line read, 255, door 3 not opened. Then beneath it, good. Mike sent me a photograph. I looked at it once, deleted it. I never worked overnight security again. Not because I believe cameras show ghosts. I don't know what I believe. Old security systems malfunction. Video feeds get mislabeled. Electronic logs corrupt. People trespass. Buildings contain forgotten spaces. There are rational explanations for almost everything that happened. Individually. The problem is explaining all of them together. Security guards are trained to investigate things other people avoid. An open door. An unusual noise. A motion alarm. Someone where they shouldn't be. That's the job. You see something suspicious. You go check it. But if you're working alone at night, and a camera appears on your monitor that you've never seen before, don't automatically assume it's another part of the building. And if that camera shows you walking somewhere you haven't gone yet, don't follow yourself. Because maybe the system isn't showing you where you need to patrol. Maybe it's showing you where the last guard went and never came back. The first time my radio called me from the north gate, I was standing in front of it. That was the problem. The gate had been permanently closed for years. No power, No security booth. No telephone line. Nothing. But at 1:37 in the morning, my radio crackled. Then a man's voice said, "North gate is open." I looked through the windshield. The gate was closed. I answered anyway. "Who is this?" The voice came back immediately. "You need to check it." I told him there was nobody stationed at the north gate. He replied, "There is now. My name is Jason. I work private security at a large manufacturing facility outside Pittsburgh. The property was huge. Several warehouses, a fabrication building, employee parking, a maintenance yard, a rail spur, and a fence perimeter that stretched almost 2 miles. My company handled overnight security. We had 2 guards on duty. One stayed in the main security office. The other drove patrol. That was usually me. The north gate was on the far side of the property. It wasn't used anymore. The company had built a newer entrance near the employee parking lot. The old gate remained because removing it would have required tearing up part of the fence. So they simply chained it shut. There was a small guard booth beside it. The booth had been abandoned years earlier. No electricity, no working lights, no furniture except an old wooden desk. During training, my supervisor specifically mentioned it. Don't waste time checking the north gate unless the perimeter alarm trips. I asked why. He said, "There's nothing there." That became one of those facts you eventually forget. My shifts were 12 hours, 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. Most nights, nothing happened. I drove the perimeter every hour, checked gates, inspected fences, looked for damaged locks, then returned to the security office. The night I first heard the north gate call, it was raining, heavy enough that visibility was terrible. At 1:30, I started a perimeter patrol, east side, south side, west side, then north. I stopped beside the old gate. The chain was still intact, padlock secure, fence undamaged. I wrote it in my patrol log, then started driving back. That's when my radio crackled. "North gate is open." I looked at the radio, then at the gate. Closed. I pressed the transmit button. "Identify yourself." Static. Then, "North gate is open." I called the security office. "Did you just transmit?" My partner, Eric, answered. "No. You hear anything?" "No." I looked at the gate again. Still closed. I drove back to the office. Eric laughed when I told him. "Probably radio interference. Someone else's transmission. Wrong frequency." We forgot about it. The next night, same thing. 1:37 a.m. "North gate is open." This time, Eric heard it too. He looked at me. "That's weird." I asked him to check the radio frequency. Everything normal. No outside channels. No nearby guards using our system. We checked the north gate camera. There wasn't one. That gate had never been wired into the modern security system. The transmission came again. "North gate is open." Eric answered. "Who is this?" The voice said, "Guard on duty." Eric looked at me. "What's your name?" Static. Then, "Jason." Neither of us spoke. I had never given my name over the radio. We checked the radio logs. Nothing. The next morning, management blamed an old repeater. The property had several abandoned communication devices. They said someone might be accidentally transmitting on the wrong channel. That explanation made sense. Until the following night. 1:37. "Jason." I grabbed the radio. "Who are you?" "Check the north gate." "Why?" "Someone is outside." I looked at Eric. He shook his head. We drove there together. The old gate was still locked. No vehicles. No people. No footprints. Nothing. Then we saw something. A flashlight. On the other side of the fence. Someone was standing in the woods. About 50 yards away. Eric turned off the headlights. We watched. The flashlight moved slowly. Left. Right. Left. Right. Someone was searching for something. I radioed. "Security. Identify yourself." The flashlight went out. We waited. Nothing. Then the radio crackled. "Don't open the gate." It was the same voice. Eric whispered, "Get back in the truck." We did. The next morning, management searched the woods. They found no one. No footprints. No flashlight. Nothing. But they discovered an old trail leading away from the gate. It hadn't been used recently. The property manager told us not to mention the incident to employees. I asked why. He said, "We've had trespassers before." That sounded reasonable. Until I found an old security report. I was looking through archived incident files when I saw the North Gate mentioned. The report was several years old. A guard had reported hearing radio transmissions from the old booth. Same time, 1:37 a.m. The guard had investigated. He never returned to the security office. His vehicle was found parked beside the North Gate. Door open. Radio still running. Police searched the property. No body. No suspect. The company eventually stopped using the booth. Closed the gate. Removed the radio equipment. I read the report twice. Then checked the employee name. His name was Michael. The same name listed on the old guard booth's faded identification plaque. I asked the property manager about him. He didn't want to talk. Eventually, he told me Michael had worked security for the previous contractor. One night, he believed someone was trying to enter through the North Gate. He went to investigate. The last transmission from his radio was, "Someone is outside." Then silence. The company never found him. After that, I stopped taking the north route alone. Eric and I patrolled together. Nothing happened for several nights. Then, one morning, I found fresh tire tracks outside the North Gate. Not inside. Outside. A vehicle had parked directly beside the old booth. The tire tracks were deep. Recent. But there was no road leading there. Only mud and grass. We followed them. They disappeared at the tree line. The next night, the radio spoke again. "Jason." I didn't answer. "Jason." I switched channels. The voice followed. "Jason." I turned the radio off. The speaker continued. Even with the power switch off. "Open the gate." I threw the radio onto the passenger seat. Eric was in the office that night. I called him from my cell. "Turn on the north camera." "There isn't one." "I know." "Then what am I turning on?" I told him what happened. He went silent. Then said, "Jason." "What?" "There's somebody standing outside the office." I looked through the patrol vehicle windshield. The office was almost a quarter mile away. I could see the lights. A figure stood beside the employee entrance, wearing a security uniform. I drove toward him. The figure disappeared. When I reached the office, Eric was standing outside. "Where'd he go?" "I don't know." "Did you see his face?" "No." Then Eric pointed toward the north. "Your radio was calling from that direction." We looked at each other. That was when we made the decision. We would check the North Gate together. One final time. Around 2 a.m. We drove there. The gate looked exactly the same. Locked. Chain intact. The abandoned booth stood beside it. Dark. Then, the radio crackled. "You're here," Eric whispered. "Yeah." The voice continued. "Good." A light appeared inside the old booth. We both froze. The booth had no electricity. The light flickered once. Then again. A silhouette moved behind the window. Someone was inside. Eric reached for his flashlight. The radio said, "Don't come inside." We didn't. The silhouette moved closer to the window. Then, the booth door opened. A man stepped outside. Security uniform. Doc jacket. Old-style radio clipped to his shoulder. He stood beside the gate. We couldn't see his face. Eric called out, "Identify yourself." The man raised his radio. Our radios both crackled. "Guard on duty." Eric looked at me. The man turned toward the woods. Then said, "He's still out there." "Who?" The man pointed into the trees. Something moved. A second figure. Then another. 3 people standing among the trees. All watching us. The first guard stepped backward. "Close the gate." "It's already closed." He shook his head. "Not this one." Then, the booth lights went out. The 3 figures disappeared. The man was gone too. Eric and I didn't move. Then the radio spoke. "Drive." We drove. We didn't stop until we reached the main gate. Police were called. They searched the north perimeter. Again, nothing. But this time, they found something inside the abandoned booth. An old notebook. Security patrol log. The pages were filled with entries from different guards. Most were normal. Fence checks. Vehicle inspections. Gate checks. The final pages were different. Every entry occurred at 1:37 a.m. Heard radio. North Gate open. Person outside. Do not open. The last entry was written in shaky handwriting. There are 3 of them now. Underneath, another sentence. The other guard is not with US. Police kept the notebook. Management finally demolished the old booth. The North Gate was removed completely. The fence was rebuilt. No more gate. No booth. No radio. For a while, Everything was quiet. I thought it was over. Then, about 2 months later, I was working another security job. Different company, different city, different radio system. One night, I was sitting in the security office around 1:37. My radio crackled. I expected dispatch. Instead, I heard a familiar voice. "North gate is open." I immediately stood up. There was no north gate at my new job. I changed channels. The transmission followed. "Jason." I switched the radio off. Nothing. Then my desk phone rang. Unknown extension. I answered. Static. Then, "Guard on duty." I hung up. The next morning, I quit. I've worked security jobs since then, but I never take overnight perimeter assignments anymore. And I never ignore an abandoned gate. Because a locked gate is supposed to tell you something. It means nobody is supposed to come through. It means the property ends there. It means there's nothing you need to investigate. But if you're working alone at night, and a voice comes over your radio telling you a closed gate is open, don't go looking for the person who called, especially if they know your name, because you don't know who is actually standing on the other side, and you definitely don't know how long they've been waiting for someone to come check. The hotel where I worked security had 18 floors, but on my first night, my supervisor gave me patrol instructions for only 17. Lobby, parking garage, floors 2 through 16, and 18. I asked him why floor 17 wasn't on the list. He said it was closed for renovation. No guests, no employees, no reason to go there. For the first month, I never did. Then one night at 3:08 in the morning, the elevator opened by itself. The display above the doors showed 17. I hadn't pressed anything. Before the doors closed, I heard a woman screaming somewhere down the hallway. I called my supervisor. He went completely silent. Then he said, "Whatever you heard, don't get off that elevator." I asked why. He answered, "Because there isn't supposed to be a hallway on 17 anymore." My name is Marcus. At the time, I worked overnight security at a business hotel outside Atlanta. It wasn't some creepy roadside motel. It was a legitimate hotel. Conference rooms, restaurant, indoor pool, parking garage, more than 200 guest rooms. During conventions, the lobby could be packed. But overnight, especially during weekdays, the place became incredibly quiet. My shift started at 11 and ended at 7. There were usually 4 employees in the building overnight. Me, 1 front desk employee, a night auditor, and 1 maintenance worker who was technically on call but spent most of the shift downstairs. My job was mostly noise complaints. People locked out of rooms, drunk guests wandering where they shouldn't, checking emergency exits, walking the parking garage. Nothing particularly dangerous. The hotel had 18 floors. The 17th had been closed before I started. Water damage. That's what I was told. Apparently a pipe had burst above several rooms. Mold. Ceiling damage. Electrical issues. Management decided to renovate the entire floor. That seemed reasonable. The elevators wouldn't even allow guests to select 17. If you pressed the button, nothing happened. Employee access cards could supposedly override it, but there was no reason to. My supervisor, Greg, trained me. He'd worked hotel security for almost 15 years. Big guy, former corrections officer, not easily frightened. During my first patrol, he specifically pointed at the elevator panel. "Skip 17. Renovation? Yeah. Construction crew work overnight? No. So if I hear something, you won't." I laughed. Greg didn't. The first strange thing happened about 3 weeks later. A guest called the front desk around 2 in the morning. Room 1608. The guest complained about loud footsteps above him. The front desk called me. "Can you check 18? "Why 18? "Guest on 16 says someone upstairs is stomping." I looked at the floor plan. 17 was directly above 16. It's probably construction. There isn't construction overnight. I took the elevator to 16. The guest opened his door immediately. Older man, clearly irritated. "Listen." We stood quietly. Thump. Then another. Thump. Directly overhead. Heavy footsteps. Walking slowly. I radioed maintenance. "Anybody on 17? "No." I called Greg. He wasn't working. He answered after several rings. "What's up?" I explained. His response was immediate. Move the guest. What? Give him another room. Shouldn't I check upstairs? No. That bothered me. But Greg was my supervisor, so I followed instructions. The guest was moved to floor 11. The footsteps stopped. The following morning, I asked Greg why he didn't want me checking 17. He said construction debris made it unsafe. Liability. Nothing more. I accepted that. A few nights later, another complaint. Room 1612. A woman said someone was dragging furniture above her. Again, 17. We moved her. Then room 1604. A child crying upstairs. There shouldn't have been a child upstairs. Then, a housekeeping employee reported hearing a telephone ringing behind the locked 17th floor service door. Management blamed old wiring. The strange thing was, nobody seemed surprised. That's when I started asking questions. One maintenance worker named Dennis had been there for years. I caught him alone during a break. What's really wrong with 17? He looked at me. Water damage. That's not what I'm asking. Dennis stirred his coffee. Your security. Yeah. Then secure the floors they pay you to secure. That was all he'd say. Then came 308. It was a Tuesday. Hotel occupancy was low. Maybe 70 rooms occupied. I was returning from the parking garage. I entered the service elevator because it was closer. Pressed lobby. The elevator started moving. Then stopped. The display showed. I hadn't pressed 17. The doors opened. For the first time, I saw the floor. No renovation. At least, not what I expected. The hallway looked finished. Carpet. Wallpaper. Wall lights. Guest room doors. Everything. But old. Different from the rest of the hotel. The wallpaper had a faded floral pattern. The carpet was dark green. Every other floor had modern gray carpet. The hallway lights were dim. Then, a woman screamed. Far down the corridor. Not a television. Not laughter. A real scream. Help! I reached for my radio. Security to 17. Static. The woman screamed again. Please. Every instinct I had told me to step out. That's literally what security is supposed to do. Someone needs help. You respond. Then I remembered Greg. I called him from my cell. He answered. I'm on 17. Silence. What? Elevator stopped. I heard somebody screaming. Greg's voice changed. Stay inside. Someone needs help. No. Greg. Do not get off that elevator. Another scream. Closer. I looked down the hallway. A woman appeared. Maybe 50 feet away. White hotel robe. Bare feet. Dark hair. She stood in the middle of the hallway. Sir? She sounded terrified. I stepped toward the elevator threshold. Greg shouted through the phone. Marcus. I stopped. The woman started walking toward me. Slowly. Please help me. I pressed lobby. Nothing. Pressed closed door. Nothing. She kept approaching. 30 feet. 20. Then I noticed something. Every room door behind her was open. Not wide. Just slightly. Dark gaps. As she passed each one, the door slowly closed. Click. Next room. Click. Next. Click. I hit the alarm button. The elevator doors finally moved. The woman ran. Not walked. Ran. Wait. The doors closed when she was maybe 6 feet away. The elevator dropped. Lobby. I practically fell out. The front desk employee looked at me. What happened? I told her. She became pale. Did she get in? That question stopped me. What? Did anyone get into the elevator with you? No. She looked relieved. That was when I realized she knew something too. Greg arrived 40 minutes later. So did the hotel manager. They took me into a conference room. I demanded an explanation. The manager finally gave me one. There had been water damage on 17. That part was true, but it happened after the floor had already been closed. Years earlier, there had been an incident. A guest staying in room 1717 called the front desk shortly after 3 in the morning. She said someone was trying to enter her room. Security went upstairs. The hallway was empty. No signs of forced entry. They reassured her. Left. 20 minutes later, she called again. This time, she said someone was already inside. Security returned. Room locked from inside. No response. They opened it with a master key. The room was empty. Her luggage remained. Phone, wallet, shoes, everything. The balcony door was locked. Windows didn't open. There was nowhere she could have gone. Police searched. Nothing. She was never found. Afterward, strange calls started coming from 1717, usually around 3:08 a.m. Front desk would answer. Sometimes silence. Sometimes crying. Sometimes a woman saying, "Please send security." The hotel eventually took the room out of service. Then neighboring rooms. Eventually, the entire floor. Why tell everyone it's water damage? I asked. The manager looked exhausted. Because guests don't book hotels where women disappear from locked rooms. That answer was so practical, it almost made the whole thing worse. I asked about the hallway I'd seen. The manager frowned. What about it? I described the green carpet, floral wallpaper, old wall lights. Greg and the manager looked at each other. The manager pulled out his phone, found an old photograph, the 17th floor before renovation. Green carpet, floral wallpaper, exactly what I'd seen. But the floor had been stripped years ago. Concrete, exposed framing, no finished hallway. The next morning, Greg took me upstairs. Daylight, 2 maintenance employees with us. The elevator required a special key. Doors opened, bare concrete, plastic sheeting, exposed wiring, walls partially demolished. Nothing like what I'd seen. We walked to room 1717, or where it used to be. There wasn't a room anymore. The wall had been removed. Several former rooms had been combined into an open construction area. Then my radio crackled. A woman's voice. "Sir?" All 4 of us heard it. Greg turned the radio off. Nobody said anything. We left. For about a month, I refused to use the service elevator. Nothing happened. Then guests started reporting someone knocking on doors. Floor 16. Always around 3. 3 knocks. Then a woman's voice. "Security?" Guests would look through the peephole. Nobody. Management installed additional cameras. One night, camera 16-4 recorded something. At 3:08, the elevator opened. Nobody stepped out. The doors remained open for several seconds. Then, a shadow moved across the carpet. Not a person, just a shadow. It traveled down the hallway. Stopped outside room 1617. 3 knocks came from inside the room. The guest woke. Called the front desk. Security responded. The room was empty except for the guest. We moved him. The following morning, housekeeping found a hotel key card beneath his bed. Room. That card format hadn't been used in years. Management finally decided to completely disable the 17th floor elevator access. Not software. Physical disconnect. Technicians removed the floor selection wiring. It didn't help. 2 weeks later, I was watching lobby cameras around 3 in the morning. The service elevator display changed. Then, descending, I stood behind the security desk. The elevator reached the lobby. Doors opened. Empty. Then the lobby phone rang. I answered. "Security," a woman whispered. He followed me downstairs. I felt cold immediately. "Who?" Silence. Then, the man outside my room. The line disconnected. I checked the caller ID. I called Greg. While waiting for him, I noticed something on the lobby camera. A man stood near the elevators. I couldn't see him from the security desk, only on camera. Tall, dark clothing, facing the elevator. I looked physically toward the same spot. Empty. Looked at the monitor. Still there. Then the man turned toward the camera. His face was blurred. He started walking toward the security desk. On camera. In the real lobby. Nothing. Closer. Closer. Then he stopped directly in front of me. Only the desk separated us. I could see nothing with my own eyes. On the monitor, he leaned forward. My radio crackled. A woman's voice screamed. "Don't let him upstairs." Every elevator opened simultaneously. I ran outside. That was the last overnight shift I ever worked there. I transferred to another property. Daytime security. Months later, Dennis called me. The hotel had finally started a complete renovation of 17. Construction workers removed walls, flooring, old plumbing, everything. Behind what had once been room 1717, they found a narrow service cavity. It ran between guest rooms and an old ventilation shaft, large enough for a person to crawl through. That changed the original disappearance investigation. Maybe someone had entered the woman's room through the wall. Maybe she'd been taken into the service space. Maybe the locked door had never mattered. Police searched the cavity. They found old clothing, hotel towels, guest belongings, several room keys. No human remains. But they did find something connected to the missing woman. A bracelet. Her family identified it. Suddenly, the story wasn't supernatural anymore. At least, not completely. Someone may actually have been hiding inside the walls of that hotel, watching rooms, entering them without using doors. That possibility scared me more than anything I'd seen on the cameras. Then Dennis told me the part one couldn't explain. The service cavity ended near room 1712. It never reached 1717. There was a solid concrete fire barrier between them. Original construction. Never cut. Never opened. The bracelet had been found on the wrong side. The police reopened parts of the old case. I don't know what came from it. Dennis eventually stopped working there. Greg retired. I moved out of Georgia. A couple of years later, I stayed at a hotel while traveling for work. Completely different state. Different company. Different building. My room was on the 9th floor. Around 3 in the morning, I woke to 3 knocks. I looked at the clock. 3:08. I sat up. 3 more knocks. Then a woman's voice outside. Security? I didn't move. She knocked again. Please. I walked toward the door. Then stopped. Through the peephole. The hallway was empty. My phone rang. Hotel front desk. I answered. Mr. Marcus? Yes. The employee sounded confused. Did you just call security? No. There was a pause. Someone called from your room. I stared at the phone. I'm the only person here. Another pause. Then the employee said. The caller was a woman. I packed my things. Left immediately. I've never stayed above the 8th floor of a hotel since. Maybe that's irrational. I know. Hotels are complicated buildings. Old wiring. Shared ventilation. Service corridors. Electronic locks. Cameras with blind spots. There are rational explanations for sounds and strange calls. And there may even be a rational explanation for what happened to that woman. Maybe somebody really was using hidden spaces behind the rooms. Maybe the hotel's original investigation missed something. But there's one thing I learned from working overnight security. When someone calls for help, your instinct is to go toward them. That's what you're paid to do. And sometimes, that's exactly what someone is counting on. So if you're working hotel security at 3 in the morning, and an elevator takes you to a floor that's supposed to be closed, stay inside. If you hear someone crying, call for backup. And if a person comes running down the hallway begging you to hold the doors, don't assume they're the one you need to protect. Because you have no idea what might be following them from the room they just escaped.